Going to need to go ahead and make sure we have a flat surface on this board so that I can put it up against the fence there and get a good true joint. Once I have that, I can put that jointed face against my table saw and rip down to the 2.5 inches that I wanted the picture frame to be. This second board didn't yield a full 2.5 inches out of its full length, so you'll see where I changed my order of operations later to deal with this. Now that I have my pieces ripped down to width, I can run them through the planer and get the make sure I have a consistent thickness for both pieces to make sure I don't have any rough joints at my miters, that everything lines up. This miter sled is based on the Drunken Woodworker's revised version of the fine woodworking miter sled, and it is supposed to have a stop block. I have that in place now. I was waiting on it to be delivered from Amazon, but I found that it actually works quite well even without the stop block, so long as you hold it firm against the fence and you're careful not to allow it to shift while you're cutting. Normally I'd do all my shaping before cutting my miters, but while the two ends of the offcut were over the 2.5 inches that I needed for the frame, in the middle had a bad bow and dropped down to like 2.25. This meant I only had about 15 inches that were usable from that second piece, and I'd have to cut my primary piece in a way that saved what would normally be the wedge of waste between the two miters. With a 2.5 inch thick frame, this comes out to be about 5 inches of waste for every joint, or 20 inches over that entire board or project. But by cutting it in a way where I saved all that waste, I was able to get this entire picture out of that one board and the 15 inches that I needed out of the other. So right here I'm cutting a large chamfer on the short, one of the short side pieces, and you'll see that I didn't quite get a flush cut as it comes through. There's a little bit of a lip. So I went ahead and raised the blade a couple of times until that just cut and created a nice angle without that step down. Now I'm going to cut my rabbets. This is a 3/8 inch tall off the face of the rabbet, or off the face of the router table, and it insets by 1/2 inch. This is going to ensure that I have ample space to fit my print and anything in the back of the board and whatnot. And to give myself a nice finish, I'm using a smoothing planer to remove any of the saw marks and any of the imperfections in the wood. And as you see me plane this, you should start to notice a sheen. So the wood naturally, because the plane's taking such a fine cut and severing those grains, there's no dust or anything created like when sanding, and you have a finished ready surface straight off the plane. I'm using a bench-crafted moccasin vise here. Pretty much just used some scraps I had laying around to make it. So it's a mahogany faceplate and a little bit of lightly figured maple for the base and the back clamp. Now that I have my rabbet, I can cut to my final dimension for all these pieces. And with this jig, it's just important to remember you start with your first cut on the left and then move to your second cut on the right, and then make sure that your pieces go into that same configuration into your final glue up. I find it helpful to mark my edges so that I know which ones correspond to each other. It kind of idiot-proofs it when you're when you got glue drying and everything else. You don't want to have to think about which one goes where, and anything I can do to, like I said, idiot-proof it is a good thing for me, because if I can mess it up at glue up, I generally will. And I'm just going to use the band clamp here. I'm making sure to apply a good amount of glue over the entire surface for both sides of the miter, but I'm staying away from the front edge to try to minimize any squeeze out. Of course, I'm still going to get some squeeze out, but I was just trying to minimize that amount, and I knew once I saw any squeeze out at those joints that meant I had a nice tight clamping force on all those joints. And just a little water to go ahead and clean up that squeeze out. And these little quick clamps do a good job of pulling those joints together. Now I've actually lost the footage for doing the finish, but it's just a even parts mix of mineral spirits, tung oil, and boiled linseed oil mixed together in just a glass I had laying around. I rubbed it on, let it sit for 10 minutes, and then wiped it off. So now I'm putting in some T-slots so that I can hang this on the wall. It's not large enough to need a French cleat, and really all I did was mark on both sides 1.5 inches away from the edge of where this bit would bite, and I drop it down. This is a T-slot router bit, and then I move over to where I was 1 inch away from the end of the frame, and so with those two spots marked out, I knew how to go ahead and place my pieces. The important thing is to make sure that your T-slot entrance hole is in the same side on both pieces, otherwise you won't actually be able to get this on the wall. And this here is a tool that just puts framing points in for you. It's faster, it's easier, it's safer than using finished nails, which is what I've done in the past. And there's my print from Yosemite. And of course I have to sign it. I did have this photo mounted to artboard at the printer. It helps to prevent the picture from sagging over time. If you have a non-mounted print, you would just want to back it with something like cardboard, artboard, or 1/8 inch plywood, and adjust your rabbet to make sure it's deep enough for all your materials to sit in it and still have room for the framing points. What I'm doing here is measuring the distance between those 2 points. It ended up being 28.5 inches. So previously I'd held it up and asked my wife where it should go, kind of marked the center from there, and now I'm measuring out 14.25 inches on both sides. Going to go ahead and mark those spots and pull a level and draw my lines once I've done that. Now I know the intersection points of where I need to go ahead and put my screws so that we can mount the picture. I did one last sanity check. I pulled the screw and made sure the head would fit through the T-slot, and it does. It's a tight fit, which is why you'll see me struggle with it a little bit later. If I had it all over to do over again, I'd probably use a little bit wider of a T-nut bit to make it easier to locate the heads into it. And for some reason I was klutzy today, so I dropped what I was working on a few times. Now I'm just putting in the wall anchors and using everyone's favorite hammer. Another thing I could have done to make my life a little easier is probably leave those screw heads out a little further. I just wanted to make sure I didn't have to do this twice. Which is funny because later you're going to see I had to do it twice. Looking for that screw head again, and right here I think I have it. And then my wife tells me it's not level. Alright, as you see there, you have a little bit of play with where it centers once you attach it there, and this thing is up there very secure. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe for more videos that I'll have posted shortly.